All right, Saagar, what are you looking at?
Well, you may not have missed this, but we have some very, very interesting news out of the intelligence community. Now, as usual, the media and the intelligence community and their relationship around all of this is very interesting. Here is how a new lab leak hypothesis report from the intel community is being reported. So let's put this up there. First of all, it was leaked to some very friendly reporters over at the Washington Post. Now, the way that they publish this is as quote from Ellen Nakashima. The intel community gives Biden its long-awaited report on COVID origin, but fails to crack the case, officials say. No determination on whether the virus resulted from a lab leak or animal to human infection. But here's the thing. If you look further within whether the report was even ill-conceived in the first place, you would discover that the DNI, the head of the intel community herself, Avril Haines, already said back in June when the 90-day order was given to the intel community in order to produce a report around the lab leak hypothesis, quote, "We're hoping to find a smoking gun, but it's challenging to do that. It might happen, it might not." Furthermore, within the report, they acknowledge that the intel community itself doesn't have the expertise that they needed to actually even come to a conclusive report, that they would have had to onload dozens of pathology experts, lab expertise, and more, not to mention the fact that we don't even have the evidence, the direct evidence that we would need out of the Wuhan Institute of Virology in the first place. And yet, this frankly, BS report from the intelligence community is already being used by the media in order to whitewash and say that the lab leak theory had no basis in fact in the first place. So let's go ahead and put this next thing up there on the screen from Virginia Heffernan. Now, Virginia, she's an LA Times columnist, but more importantly, this tweet really made the rounds amongst elite liberal media circles. Here's what she says. To those who stake an argument about lib media bias on the premise that reporters were too woke and afraid to cover the lab leak hypothesis, quote, number one, they did cover it. Number two, it wasn't that compelling. She then goes through and cites a number of places in which the media did cover up the lab leak theory, specifically for ideological reasons, and comes finally to the inconclusive report out of the intelligence community. Now, first of all, that report from the intel community remains classified. The White House and others say that parts of it will be released. Okay, I'm not going to hold my breath. But in reality, given the open source information that we already have around the lab leak theory and more, it is clear beyond a shadow of a doubt with the circumstantial evidence that there is more evidence to point towards a lab leak than there is towards natural origin. And yet, the media, combined with Dr. Anthony Fauci and Francis Collins, the head of the NIH, as recently as of just 2 days ago, are still saying that, quote, the vast majority of the evidence, that's from Dr. Francis Collins, points towards a natural origin of the virus. All of this is to be said is that the Biden administration from the get-go has been passing the buck on this. They have said that first the WHO should do an investigation, even though we already know that the WHO is compromised, that the main investigator that they use, Dr. Peter Daszak, already had ties to the lab. Then they kicked it to the intel community saying, hey, you guys figure it out, even though they literally don't have the resources in order to do so. The only people who are ever going to know for sure are the people inside the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And if we had gotten our act together quicker, perhaps we could have done so. But right now, the circumstantial evidence around what we have seen in terms of the known number of Wuhan Institute of Virology lab staffers who were sick back in November of 2019, given the fact that the World Military Games seem to have been a nexus point for coronavirus in the city of Wuhan, given the lies that the Chinese government has pushed consistently on the natural origin theory, and then finally, really what we know about gain of function research itself, it seems clear the direction in which it points. So what I really am seeing here is a media and concerted campaign by the Biden administration and by our mass media to try and cover up what is clearly happening here. And that's the problem we have, Crystal, which is that they're trying to see the inconclusiveness of the report and just brush it under the rug.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.